Capricorn, Capricorn. One phrase that makes Capricorn ghost you without warning. There's a sentence that can make a Capricorn vanish from your life completely. Not gradually. Not with explanations. Just gone. And the most unsettling part? They won't even realize they're doing it until it's already done. This isn't about anger. It's not about drama. It's about something far more complex that lives beneath the surface of every Capricorn's carefully constructed world. Most astrology content will tell you that Capricorns are loyal, committed, unshakable. And they are. Until they're not. Until one specific trigger flips a switch so deep inside them that retreat becomes the only option their nervous system recognizes. Almost nobody talks about this pattern because it doesn't fit the narrative we've built around this sign. We see the mountain goat climbing, persisting, enduring. We don't see what happens when the climb suddenly feels pointless. If you're a Capricorn, you felt this moment. That instant when something inside you goes cold and clear, and you know with absolute certainty that you're done. If you love a Capricorn, you've probably experienced the confusion of their sudden absence, wondering what you possibly could have said or done to trigger such a complete withdrawal. Before we go deeper into this invisible pattern, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button right now. This channel explores the psychological architecture beneath zodiac signs, the patterns nobody else is mapping. And smash that like button if you've ever felt yourself shut down completely in a relationship without fully understanding why. Here's my question for you, and I want you to really sit with this. Have you ever felt yourself emotionally exit a situation while your body was still present? Have you ever known, with crystal clarity, that you were done with someone or something, but couldn't articulate exactly why? Drop a comment and tell me. Have you experienced this without being able to explain it? Because what we're about to explore isn't just about Capricorn. It's about the architecture of emotional self-preservation that looks like strength, but might actually be something else entirely. It's about the moment when protection becomes isolation, when boundaries become walls, when self-sufficiency becomes loneliness dressed up as independence. Stay with me. This might be the most important thing you hear about yourself or someone you love this year. Let me introduce you to the central paradox of the Capricorn psyche, emotional self-reliance taken to its absolute extreme. This isn't just independence. This is a nervous system that has been trained, often from childhood, that vulnerability equals danger, that needing someone makes you weak, that the only person you can truly count on is yourself. Picture a child who learned too early that their emotions were inconvenient. Maybe their parents were overwhelmed or emotionally unavailable or simply too busy building their own lives to notice when their child was struggling. The Capricorn child doesn't rebel against this. They don't act out. Instead, they do something far more sophisticated. They internalize the message and become exceptionally self-sufficient. They become the child who doesn't need help, the one who figures things out alone, the one who makes their parents proud by never being a burden. This becomes their superpower. While other children are learning to ask for help, to express needs, to trust that others will catch them when they fall, Capricorn is building an internal fortress of competence. They're learning that achievement equals love, that productivity equals worth, that needing nothing from anyone is the highest form of strength. And for a long time, this works beautifully. Capricorns become the reliable ones, the ones everyone depends on, the mountain that doesn't move, the friend who always has it together, the partner who handles everything, the colleague who never complains. This emotional self-reliance looks like maturity. It looks like strength. It looks like the kind of person everyone wishes they could be. But here's where the first crack appears, even if nobody can see it yet. This trait was never about genuine strength. It was about survival. It was about a child learning to need nothing because needing something felt too risky. It was about creating safety through emotional isolation and calling it independence. It was about building walls so high that abandonment became impossible because you never let anyone close enough to leave in the first place. The Capricorn grows up believing their emotional self-reliance is a gift, a strength, a defining characteristic they should be proud of. And society reinforces this constantly. We celebrate the person who has their life together. We admire the one who never seems to struggle. We're drawn to the stability of someone who appears unshakable. What we don't see is the cost. The constant vigilance required to maintain that image. The exhaustion of never allowing yourself to lean on anyone. The quiet loneliness of being surrounded by people who admire you but don't truly know you. The ache of wanting connection, but having no idea how to allow it without feeling like you're losing yourself. This is where the pattern begins. Not in the moment of ghosting. Not in the sudden withdrawal. But decades earlier, in a child who learned that emotional autonomy wasn't a choice. It was the only safe option available. Let's talk about the two versions of Capricorn that exist simultaneously. The public one and the hidden one. The performance and the truth. To the outside world, Capricorn presents as completely put together, competent, organized, reliable, the person with a plan. The one who shows up on time, meets deadlines, remembers details, follows through on commitments. They're the friend you call when you need practical help. The partner who handles logistics. The colleague who keeps projects on track. Their external presentation screams stability, maturity, groundedness. Watch a Capricorn in their professional life or social settings. They're often quiet observers, speaking when they have something valuable to contribute. They don't need attention. They don't create drama. They simply exist as this steady, capable presence that makes everyone around them feel like things are under control. People describe them as old souls, wise beyond their years, the adult in the room. In relationships, they often play the role of the stable one. The partner who doesn't have messy emotional breakdowns. The one who solves problems instead of creating them. The one who provides security, consistency, predictability. They're proud of this role. It confirms their value. It proves they're not a burden. But internally, there's an entirely different experience happening. Inside, Capricorn is running constant calculations. Every interaction is being measured against invisible metrics of worth and safety. They're assessing, am I giving too much? Am I becoming dependent? Is this person going to disappoint me? How much can I trust this? What's my exit strategy if this falls apart? The mental energy required to maintain their external composure while running these internal programs is staggering. There's a profound loneliness in being the strong one. In being the person everyone leans on, but feeling like you can't lean on anyone. Capricorns often describe feeling like they're watching their own lives from behind glass. Present, but somehow separate. Connected, but fundamentally alone. They can be in a room full of people who love them and still feel completely isolated because nobody sees past the capable exterior to the exhausted person underneath. Here's what makes this particularly painful. Capricorns often genuinely want connection. They want intimacy. They want to be known. But their entire nervous system has been wired to equate vulnerability with danger. So they find themselves in this impossible bind, craving closeness while being terrified of what closeness requires, wanting to be seen while maintaining the exact defenses that keep them hidden. The effort of maintaining this split is enormous. They're constantly editing themselves, monitoring what they reveal, making sure their needs don't become visible, ensuring their struggles remain private, keeping their uncertainties hidden, presenting only the polished, finished version of themselves, while the messy, uncertain, needy parts get locked away. And the most heartbreaking part? They're often doing this with people who would absolutely show up for them if given the chance. Partners who want to support them. Friends who would help. Family who cares. But Capricorn has decided, usually unconsciously, that asking for help is more dangerous than suffering alone. That needing someone gives that person too much power. That vulnerability is a luxury they can't afford. So they keep performing strength while internally depleting. They keep showing up as reliable while feeling increasingly disconnected. They keep being the mountain while secretly wondering if anyone would notice if the mountain crumbled. This is the exhausting double life of Capricorn. The public persona of having it all together while privately struggling with the weight of always having to have it all together. And this split, this constant performance, is exactly what sets the stage for the ghosting pattern we're exploring. Now, let's examine the behavioral cycles that emerge from this internal architecture. These are patterns Capricorns find themselves repeating across different relationships, different jobs, different life phases, patterns that feel frustratingly familiar even when the circumstances change. The first pattern, overextension, followed by resentful withdrawal. Capricorn takes on too much. They become the dependable one in every relationship, the problem solver, the strong shoulder. They don't set boundaries because setting boundaries means admitting they have limits, and admitting limits feels like weakness. So they keep saying yes, keep showing up, keep handling things, keep being reliable, until suddenly they can't anymore. The resentment that's been building silently reaches a breaking point. And instead of communicating that they're overwhelmed, instead of asking for support or renegotiating the dynamic, they simply withdraw. They become unavailable. They create distance. They pull back emotionally while often maintaining the external appearance of presence. They're there, but not really there. And when asked what's wrong, they say nothing, because they genuinely don't have the vocabulary or the permission to express what's actually happening inside them. The second pattern, testing people through silence. Capricorns often create tests that their loved ones don't know they're taking. They'll pull back slightly to see if the other person notices. They'll stop initiating contact to see if the relationship can survive without their effort. They'll have a problem and deliberately not mention it to see if their partner is intuitive enough to sense something's wrong. These aren't conscious manipulations. They're unconscious attempts to answer the question that haunts them. Do you actually care about me, or just about what I do for you? The tragedy is that most people fail these invisible tests because they trust Capricorn's external presentation. If Capricorn says they're fine, people believe them. If Capricorn appears self-sufficient, people assume they don't need anything. So the Capricorn's worst fear gets confirmed repeatedly. I can't rely on anyone but myself. The third pattern, emotional exit before physical exit. This is crucial to understanding the ghosting phenomenon. Capricorn often emotionally leaves relationships long before they physically leave. There's a moment, sometimes triggered by a specific incident, sometimes just accumulated disappointment, when they internally decide this isn't safe or this person can't meet me where I need to be met. And in that moment, they begin the process of detachment. But they don't announce this. They don't have a conversation. They might not even consciously recognize they've made this decision. They simply begin the slow, quiet process of withdrawing their emotional investment. They become less available, less forthcoming, less engaged. They start operating from the assumption that this relationship has an expiration date. So they begin protecting themselves from the eventual loss. The fourth pattern, crisis decision-making. Capricorns can deliberate endlessly about small decisions, but make sudden, irreversible choices about major life changes. They'll agonize over whether to change jobs for months, but then end a long-term relationship in an afternoon. They'll research purchases meticulously, but cut off a friendship without warning. This isn't randomness. It's what happens when someone who suppresses emotions reaches a saturation point. The decision doesn't feel sudden to them because they've been processing it silently for months or years. But to everyone else, it appears to come out of nowhere. The fifth pattern, the cycle of connection and retreat. Capricorn gets close to someone, feels the vulnerability that comes with closeness, panics, and creates distance. Then, once they feel safe again, they allow closeness. Then, vulnerability triggers panic again. This cycle can repeat across years, leaving their loved ones confused about where they stand. Yesterday, we were intimate and connected. Today, you're distant and unavailable. What changed? What changed is that Capricorn's nervous system hit its threshold for vulnerability and activated the protection protocol. These patterns create a life that can feel like you're always on the outside of your own experience. Always watching yourself make the same choices, while some part of you knows there's another way, but can't quite access it. Capricorns often describe feeling trapped in their own patterns, recognizing them, but unable to break them, because the patterns feel like survival rather than choice. And here's the crucial part. These patterns intensify over time if left unexamined. Each repetition reinforces the neural pathway. Each time Capricorn withdraws instead of communicates, that option becomes more automatic. Each time they choose isolation over vulnerability, the pathway back to connection becomes harder to find. Let's talk about what happens when these patterns compound over years and decades. The accumulated emotional cost of living this way. The price of chronic self-reliance and defended autonomy. The first consequence is the gradual erosion of emotional range. When you spend years suppressing needs, avoiding vulnerability, and maintaining constant composure, your access to your own emotional life begins to narrow. It's not that Capricorns don't feel, it's that they become so practiced at managing feelings, containing them, keeping them private, that they lose fluent access to their own inner world. They can identify anger because anger feels strong, and they can identify satisfaction because achievement is allowed. But the middle range, longing, tenderness, uncertainty, playfulness, spontaneous joy, starts to feel foreign or unsafe. This creates a quality of emotional flatness that Capricorns often don't notice in themselves, but that becomes visible in their relationships. Partners describe feeling like they can never quite reach them, like there's always a slight distance, a barrier, a formality, even in intimate moments. Capricorn interprets this feedback as the other person being too needy or too emotional, not recognizing that their own emotional range has been gradually shrinking. The second consequence affects decision-making around commitment and intimacy. When you've spent your life protecting yourself from dependence, making choices that require genuine interdependence becomes almost impossible. Big decisions, moving in together, marriage, having children, merging finances, long-term business partnerships, all require a level of trust that Capricorn's nervous system reads as dangerous. So they either avoid these commitments entirely, keeping relationships at a safe distance indefinitely, or they make them from a purely logical place without accessing the emotional vulnerability required to truly invest. They analyze the decision rather than feel into it. This creates relationships that look committed on the surface, but have an emotional escape hatch already built in. Capricorn maintains the option of not being fully in, even when they've made external commitments that suggest otherwise. The third consequence is the impact on their sense of security and stability, the exact things Capricorn values most. Paradoxically, the strategies they use to create security actually undermine it. By never fully investing emotionally, by always keeping an exit strategy, by maintaining extreme self-reliance, they create a life where deep security becomes impossible. True security requires trust. It requires allowing yourself to need someone. It requires believing that if you fall, someone will catch you. But Capricorn has built their entire identity around never falling, never needing to be caught. This leaves them living on the surface of their own lives, never allowing themselves to sink into the depth of genuine belonging. They achieve external markers of stability, career success, financial security, respected social position, while internally feeling fundamentally untethered and alone. The fourth consequence is accumulated grief that has nowhere to go. Every relationship that Capricorn has silently exited without processing, every need they've suppressed, every moment of vulnerability they've avoided, every time they've chosen loneliness over the risk of disappointment. This grief accumulates in the body. It manifests as tension, rigidity, chronic stress, exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix, a heaviness that becomes their baseline. Capricorns often describe feeling tired in a way that has nothing to do with how much they've done. It's the exhaustion of carrying unprocessed emotion, of maintaining defenses constantly, of never fully relaxing into trust, of being perpetually braced for disappointment. The fifth consequence shows up in how they experience success. Capricorns achieve. They accomplish. They reach the goals they set. But there's often a hollowness to their achievements because there's no one they've allowed close enough to genuinely celebrate with them. They reach the mountain peak alone, look around at the view, and realize that achievement without connection feels like organizing someone else's life. The success is real, but the joy is muted because joy requires the vulnerability of sharing it. Over time, many Capricorns find themselves in lives that look impressive from the outside, but feel empty from the inside. They've built exactly what they thought they wanted: independence, achievement, self-sufficiency, respect. And somehow, it's not enough. But they can't articulate what's missing, because what's missing is the very thing they've spent their lives protecting themselves against: genuine, vulnerable, mutual dependence. This is the long-term cost. Not dramatic failure, not visible collapse, but a slow, quiet diminishment of aliveness. A life that functions perfectly but doesn't feel fully lived. Relationships that exist but don't nourish. Success that accumulates but doesn't satisfy. Security that never actually feels secure because it's built on the foundation of never truly trusting anyone, including themselves. Here's the truth that sits at the center of all of this, the thing that Capricorn has been running from while simultaneously running toward. The very strategies you developed to protect yourself from abandonment guarantee that you'll end up alone. Sit with that for a moment. Really let it land. You built these walls to keep yourself safe. You developed this capacity for emotional self-reliance to ensure you'd never be destroyed by needing someone who couldn't meet you. You created this identity of being the strong one, the capable one, the one who needs nothing, as protection against the unbearable vulnerability of being human. And in doing so, you've created the exact outcome you feared most: isolation, disconnection, a life where you're surrounded by people who admire you but don't know you, relationships where you're present but protected, a constant, low-grade loneliness that you've learned to call independence. The phrase that makes a Capricorn ghost you? It's not actually a phrase someone else says. It's the moment when someone asks for genuine emotional intimacy. When they want to see the parts of you that aren't competent and composed. When they express a need for you not as the capable problem solver, but as the vulnerable human underneath. When they want mutuality instead of admiring your self-sufficiency. That's the trigger. That's the moment when Capricorn's nervous system says danger and activates the protocol that looks like sudden withdrawal, but is actually a decades-old defense mechanism doing exactly what it was designed to do: protect you from the terrifying prospect of being truly seen and needed. But here's what that protection costs you: everything you actually want. Connection, intimacy, being known, having someone witness not just your achievements, but your struggles. Someone seeing your uncertainty and not losing respect for you. Someone meeting your needs without you having to perform worthiness first. You've been so focused on not being abandoned that you haven't noticed you've abandoned yourself. You've exiled the parts of you that need, that long, that want to be held without having to hold everyone else first. You've created an internal hierarchy where the capable parts get to exist and the vulnerable parts have to hide. And then you wonder why your life feels half-lived. Every relationship you've ghosted without explanation, every conversation you've avoided, every moment you chose withdrawal over staying present with discomfort. These weren't victories over weakness. They were confirmations of the pattern. They were you choosing the familiar pain of loneliness over the unfamiliar risk of being met. And the most heartbreaking part? You're good at so many things. You're capable, intelligent, disciplined, reliable. You have so much to offer. But none of those qualities can substitute for the one thing connection actually requires: the willingness to be known in your incompleteness, to be seen in your need, to let someone matter to you enough that their absence would hurt. That's the work you've been avoiding. Not achieving more, not becoming more self-sufficient, not perfecting your ability to need nothing from anyone. The work is learning that needing someone doesn't make you weak, that asking for help doesn't diminish your worth, that vulnerability isn't the opposite of strength. It's the foundation of everything you actually want. You are enough without the performance, without the perfect composure, without having it all together. You are always enough. But you'll never know that as long as you only allow people to see the edited version. So where does this leave us? Where does this leave you, if you're a Capricorn recognizing yourself in this pattern? Or if you love a Capricorn and finally understand why they keep disappearing just when things get close. First, recognition without judgment. These patterns didn't develop because you're broken or defective. They developed because they worked. They kept you safe in an environment where vulnerability felt dangerous. The child, you were made brilliant adaptations to survive their circumstances. That child deserves respect, not criticism. But what worked at 7 doesn't work at 37. The strategies that protected you then are limiting you now. And you get to choose differently. Not because the old way is bad, but because you're ready for something more complete. The path forward isn't about becoming less independent or abandoning your capacity for self-reliance. It's about expanding your range, adding vulnerability to your repertoire without losing your strength, learning that you can be both capable and needing, both strong and uncertain, both reliable and requiring support. This means practicing small acts of vulnerability with safe people, not transforming overnight, but experimenting with sharing one need instead of handling everything alone, expressing one uncertainty instead of maintaining the illusion of having all the answers, asking for help with something small before you're desperate. It means noticing when your instinct is to withdraw and asking yourself, am I protecting myself from actual danger or from the discomfort of being seen? Not every instance of wanting to pull back is a pattern that needs changing. But developing the capacity to distinguish between genuine boundary setting and habitual defense is crucial. It means being honest about the cost of ghosting. When you disappear without explanation, you're not just protecting yourself. You're also denying the other person closure, assuming they can't handle honesty, and reinforcing your belief that communication is more dangerous than abandonment. What if the next time you want to exit, you try one conversation first? Not to convince yourself to stay, but to practice showing up for the uncomfortable moment instead of vanishing from it. For those who love Capricorns, understanding this pattern doesn't mean accepting treatment that hurts you. You can have compassion for why they ghost, while also maintaining boundaries about what you will and won't tolerate. You can love someone and still require them to show up for repair conversations. Compassion doesn't mean staying in relationships where you're constantly guessing whether the person is actually present or already gone. The invitation here for Capricorn and for everyone is to recognize that our survival strategies have expiration dates. What kept you safe in childhood might be keeping you lonely in adulthood. And you get to update the program. Not because you should, not because you're supposed to, but because you deserve a life where connection is possible, where you're known, not just admired, where you can rest instead of performing constantly. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about completion, integrating the parts you've exiled, allowing the full range of your humanity instead of just the acceptable portions, discovering that you're lovable not despite your needs, but as the complete, complex, occasionally uncertain person you actually are. Before you go, I have a question that I really want you to think about and answer honestly in the comments. At what moment did you recognize this pattern in your own life? Was there a specific relationship where you felt yourself disappearing? A moment when you realized you'd rather ghost than have one vulnerable conversation? Or, if you're on the other side of this, when did you first notice someone you cared about slipping away without explanation? Drop your answer in the comments. Not a story you think sounds good. The real moment. The one that still sits with you. This community is built on honesty, and your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to feel less alone in their pattern. And if this video resonated with you, do me a favor. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not to call them out, not to prove a point, but because awareness is the first step toward choice, and someone in your life might be ready for that awareness right now. Make sure you're subscribed, because next week we're exploring the flip side of this. The signs that make you chase them even when you know you should walk away. The psychological hooks that keep you invested in people who've already emotionally exited. It's the perfect companion piece to what we've covered today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing the work of examining these patterns instead of just repeating them. That takes courage. I'll see you in the next video.